Every once in a while, a sporting event happens that is just so wild, so completely unbelievable, it feels like a movie script. And not just any movie script, but one that a Hollywood producer would toss out for being way too unrealistic. Well, today, we're talking about exactly that, the story of the 2026 Spanish Grand Prix sprint at Jerez. And I'm not even exaggerating. Seriously. We are talking about a race that got flipped completely upside down by a sudden downpour, a string of crashes that felt endless, and a winner who literally crashed, picked his bike up out of the gravel and somehow still won. It was just pure, beautiful, unscripted chaos.
So, how in the world do we make sense of it all? Well, we're going to break this whole thing down. Think of it like the anatomy of this beautiful chaos. First, we'll look at the perfect storm brewing. Then, the massacre, when it all went sideways. We'll get to the heist, the single most audacious move of the season. Then we'll see how the wise old veterans rose from the ashes. And finally, we'll get to the verdict.
So, before all the madness, you have to picture the scene. It was a perfect day for racing in Jerez, Spain. The sun was out, the track was dry, the stands were absolutely packed. For the first few laps, it was business as usual, just incredibly fierce, shoulder-to-shoulder racing, exactly what you expect from the best in the world. The calm before the storm, for sure.
Now check this out, because this slide really foreshadows just how unpredictable this whole thing was about to get. Yeah, you've got Marc Marquez starting on pole, and he does in fact end up winning. But look at the other two guys on the podium. Pecco Bagnaia started way back in 10th, and Franco Morbidelli, he was all the way down in 18th place. This tells you right away, this was not a race that was won from the front. Everything, and I mean everything, changed with just 10 laps to go. The sky just opened up, the white flags came out, signaling what's called a flag-to-flag race. And this wasn't just a little bit of rain, okay? This was a sudden, violent downpour that turned this high-speed race into a desperate fight for survival. And that flag-to-flag rule is absolutely key here. It's a rule designed for exactly this kind of chaotic situation. It means riders can dive into the pits and literally jump onto their second bike, which the teams have ready to go with wet weather tires. So just like that, the race stops being about pure speed and turns into this high-stakes game of chess. It's all about strategy and timing.
And the change on the track was just brutal. It went from just a little greasy and damp to basically a river in a matter of minutes. Riders who were on those slick, dry weather tires were suddenly wrestling these 250 horsepower beasts on a giant slip and slide. And as you can imagine, the crashes started coming, one after another. It was a total massacre.
But in the middle of all this carnage, we saw it. The one single moment that would define this entire race. A move so weird, so completely out there that it could really only come from one man, Marc Marquez.
So get this, Marquez is leading the race, and he loses the front end of his Ducati going into the infamous turn 13. He's down. He's sliding into the gravel. You could practically hear the collective gasp from the crowd. For literally any other rider on the planet, that's it. Game over, your race is done. You wait for the marshals and you walk away. But not him. Instead of just giving up, he pulls off this unbelievable four-step move. First, he somehow wrestles his 157-kilogram Ducati back upright. Then, he actually rides it across the grass and through the gravel. And where's he aiming? Straight for the pit lane entrance, which just so happened to be right there. It wasn't really a crash anymore. It was more like a very, very unplanned shortcut. And listen to what he said after the race. This quote just tells you everything about his mindset. He didn't see it as a mistake at all. He saw it as this lucky opportunity. He said you need to know where the gate is. He knew exactly where that pit entry was, and in a split second, he turned a race-ending crash into a genius, perfectly timed bike swap. But here's the brutal, almost cruel twist to the story. Just one lap later, his own brother, Alex Marquez, who had inherited the lead from Marc's crash, he goes down at the very same corner. It was a heartbreaking mirror image. But for Alex, there was no shortcut, no convenient pit entry. His race just ended right there in the gravel. The finest of margins. Okay, so while all this incredible drama is unfolding right at the very front of the race, all that chaos created a massive opportunity for some of the more experienced, calmer heads on the grid. While the leaders were falling like flies, a few others were playing the long game. You've got to look at Francesco Pecco Bagnaia. He was having a pretty rough weekend, but he read the sky.
He read the situation perfectly, and he timed his pit stop with absolute precision to storm from 10th all the way to 2nd. And then you have the even crazier story of Franco Morbidelli. Started way, way back in 18th. He smartly decided, you know what? I'm just going to follow Pecco into the pits, and then rode a super calm, intelligent race to land on the podium. An incredible ride from the back of the grid. It was just a masterclass in experience over panic.
Of course, the second Marc Marquez crossed that finish line in first place, the question exploded across the paddock, the commentary booths, everywhere. Was that whole crash and carry move into the pits actually legal? So Race Direction looked at it and they came back with their decision pretty quickly. Their official verdict, they called it creative but legal. And the reasoning came down to two really specific technical points. First, he was on his bike when he crossed the official timing line for the pit lane entry. And second, his little off-road adventure didn't actually cut a significant part of the lap. He didn't really gain an unfair time advantage from it. So the final verdict was crystal clear. The number of penalties he got? 0. A big, fat 0. The win was official. It stood. Despite all the debate and just how bizarre the whole thing looked, according to the rulebook, he didn't break any rules. And that really leaves us with the big question that fans are going to be debating all season long. Where do you land on this? Do you look at that and see a moment of pure improvisational genius from one of the greatest riders we've ever seen? Or do you see it as an unfair move, an exploitation of the track that maybe should be outlawed in the future? It was a moment that was both brilliant and controversial. And you know what? That's what makes this sport